Good day, viewers. Welcome to the 10th edition of Citn Taxation You, Citn. We are glad to have you once again for this month of the program, May 4th, 2023. As I said, the title for today's program is Oil Subsidy in Nigeria. Oil Subsidy in Nigeria, the facts, our reality, and the way forward. Oil Subsidy in Nigeria, the fact, our reality, and the way forward. And with me in the studio, we've gone to the length and breadth of the earth to bring in an expert on this subject matter. He's an oil and gas analyst, and his name is Comrade Bala Zaka. Comrade Bala Zaka, it's nice to have you. Thank you for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll be going straight to the point, right? So I want to thank our viewers for joining in from around Nigeria and from around the world. The numbers are increasing. Thank you for the time you've brought out to identify with this program. As we go further, we are going to get to the point where we, ask your comments, questions, commentaries, and the rest. So I go before we even go to the main issue. Dr. Zaka, how are you doing?
Well, I'm all right, and I really appreciate you inviting me. You see, discourse of this nature are very, very important. When experts or professionals like you and I meet like this, discussions like this are not only very important, discussions like this help us to cross-fertilize and share knowledge. When we meet and we discuss like this, we discuss in our institute's interest and in national interest. Because like you and I are discussing, I mean, I know you know me. You are not only my senior professional colleague, you have also been my teacher. So when we meet in fora like this, talk is not cheap. Okay. I'm saying this because whatever you and I will discuss today will be like a bond. Oh, it will be like a message. It will be there for history and posterity. Wow, and I strongly believe that at the end of the day, it will be for the greater interest of our institute, our nation, the continent of Africa, and global humanity.
Wow,
thank you.
Wow. That's touching. Thank you, Dr. Bala Zaka. So go straight to the business. Can you give us our viewers, can you get us to understand, give us an overview of the Nigerian oil and gas industry, or the oil and gas industry as a whole?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Generally, when you talk about the oil and gas industry, you're talking about an energy industry. Okay. And in the context of Nigeria, I mean, globally, the oil and gas industry is divided into three. You have the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream. But let me cascade everything because we're talking about Nigeria in particular. Within Nigeria, you have what we call the upstream. When you talk about the upstream, you're talking about that aspect or area of the oil and gas industry where you go searching for what we call hydrocarbon. In this case, you're talking about oil and gas. Okay. When you identify hydrocarbon, then you come up with the mechanisms that will make you to go bring the crude oil or gas to what we call the wellhead or to the surface. Generally, when you bring it to that level, you can move it to what we call separators. And when you get to separators, you are just talking about the point of separating the crude into, crude oil, you have sand and you have water. That's everything upstream. Upstream is very, very technical. And that's why you don't see a lot of corruption, because you're talking about the raw crude oil. Then you have what we call the midstream. Technically, within Nigeria, midstream does not exist because we don't have functional refineries. Midstream has to do with moving the crude oil from the point or from the wellhead to what we call the refinery. But technically in Nigeria, because we don't have functional refineries, we only move crude oil to the point of maybe export. So that is what you may probably describe as midstream. Now, when you even talk about downstream, you're talking about from the refinery. Once you get to the point of handing over the crude to the refinery, downstream activities start. We're talking about refining the crude oil into products that we technically call distillates. Okay. And it has also to do, once you get the distillates, then you now distribute, you sell. So all the transportation, the retail outlet, the sales and marketing and everything within that sector is called downstream. But when you look at the Nigerian oil and gas industry, we have what we call sedimentary basins. They are like about 6 or 7. The prolific one is the Niger Delta Basin. that we all know about.
Okay.
We have so much crude oil and gas.
Okay.
Then the next one, you have, like around Lagos axis, there is also oil. But that axis of Lagos belongs to what we call Dahomey Basin, not the Niger Delta Basin. Then within Anambra Basin, we have discovered some crude oil and gas also. Recently, there have been discoveries around Gombe axis in an area called Kolmani. You know, that basin belongs to what we call Gongola Basin. Then about a month ago, I mean, some drilling activities or campaign, as we call it technically, started around Nasarawa State. That the basin there falls under Benue Trough. Then you have other basins like the Sokoto Basin, the Bida Basin, and the Chad Basin. Nigeria has not really been successful around the Chad Basin. Then when you talk about potential now, you know, you're talking about endowment. In terms of crude oil, Nigeria has about 36 to 37 billion barrels of crude oil, because barrels is the unit for measuring crude oil. Then when you talk about natural gas endowment, Nigeria has an excess of our proved reserve. Proved reserve means it is there with your existing technology, you can go scoop it. Okay. Nigeria has about 200 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. But potentially, Nigeria has about 600 trillion cubic feet of gas. And that tells you that Nigeria is more of a gas nation than an oil nation. But the interesting thing is this: Nigeria is a member of crude oil cartel called OPEC. So that means everything about our problems can be assisted and resolved by OPEC if we ask for support. Because of our natural gas endowment, again, Nigeria is a member of Gas Exporting Countries Forum with headquarters in Doha, Qatar. And that simply means Nigeria is supposed to be as lead as Qatar. Nigeria is supposed to have that endowment and belongs to that gas cartel and also crude oil cartel. So that is the summary. And as at around June or July last year, a Nigerian was the one presiding as the OPEC Secretary General, late Alhaji Sanusi Barkindo. Yep. So if you look at that, with all these, I mean, that will tell you that ordinarily, Nigeria is supposed to be self-sufficient in terms of energy and virtually everything.
Wow, well, thank you for this overview. You've taken the length and breadth of the various components of the oil and gas industry and how they really work. And you made something very striking, that Nigeria, functionally as we stand,
yes,
does not have the midstream.
Yes.
Because a lot of people do not know about this.
No, they don't.
Don't mention it that we have the
upstream, midstream, and downstream. Okay. But technically it does not, because midstream simply means that transportation and hauling of crude oil to the point of treatment or refining.
Okay.
But we don't have functional refineries, and we will discuss the comatose nature of our refineries. So because of that, Nigeria doesn't have it.
Okay. Okay. From all of this now, the public sector, those in government,
yes,
how can they structure this economy? You give the background,
yes,
the oil and gas industry.
Correct.
How can they structure the economy for growth and for development?
Okay, you see, ordinarily, honestly, Nigeria is supposed to be the continental hub for Africa, whether people accept it or not. Nigeria is strategically and geographically located. But when you talk about economic restructuring mechanisms, I mean, you're talking about basically public sector. Some sectors can be privatized and they will do well. Some sectors can be liberalized and they will do well. Some sectors can be commercialized and they will do well. Then some sectors can also be deregulated and they will do well. So it is now based on the creativity and dexterity of economic and political leaders of nations. And to me, personally, leaders are fellow citizens that other citizens elected and handed over their economic, political, and social destinies for the leaders to manage in national interest. And that simply means when you hand over your destinies to them, they should manage them well. So it is their duty to look at these sectors and apply the mechanisms, whether you talk about deregulation, liberalization, privatization, or commercialization.
Wow, okay. Given, you've kind of distinguished between privatization, liberalization, commercialization and deregulation.
Yes.
And now, with this background set,
yes,
going to the core
yes,
of our topic for the discussion, what is subsidy? And run us through the framework. What is this discussion? How does it work? Or how should they work generally before we pin it down to first subsidy?
Exactly. You see, I get very surprised when the way Nigeria is talking about subsidy removal, especially on the price of distillates. Okay. When I use the word distillates, I'm talking about refined petroleum products. The first thing we need to ask ourselves is, what is even subsidy? For me, the dictionary meaning is there, and you will see it related to government. To me, subsidy is a globally accepted, tested, and universally accepted economic pain cushioning concept. Subsidy is supposed to cushion pains, and subsidies are always provided by governments of nations, not private companies. So to that extent, if subsidy is not working in your own country, the truth is this: that will not vitiate the universal acceptability and relevance of the concept of subsidy. What you need to do is to check the inefficiencies and find out why it is not working in your own country. Let me give practical examples of subsidy. The only reason why we have the Nigerian Army, Navy, Civil Defense, and the rest is because there is a need to provide subsidy in security. Even if you don't provide those security agents, some people can still provide their security. But the reason why they entirely exist is because there is a need to provide subsidy in security. So if some generals, controllers, and other senior officials in security agencies are diverting equipment, diverting monies, does it mean you will now need to scrap the entire security agency? No. What you do is you check the inefficiencies. What are the lacunas? Why are they not working? That's what you're supposed to do. Then the only reason why we have public universities, polytechnics, secondary schools, and primary schools is because there is a need for the government of a nation to provide subsidy in education. And that simply means if vice chancellors or provosts or HODs are diverting monies meant for lab equipment and are harassing students, does that mean you will now scrap subsidy or scrap public education? No. What you need to do is you go in, check the inefficiencies, and fix them. The only reason why we have teaching hospitals, you have federal medical centers, you have health centers, is because there is a need for the government of a country to provide subsidy in health. So if heads of department and doctors are diverting drugs, then the next thing you will do, you will say you will scrap everything about subsidy in health and no. What you do is you check the inefficiencies. So in the case of the Nigerian oil and gas industry, it's the same thing. If for one reason or the other, we are not getting the quantity of distillates and the other things, you don't scrap the entire concept of subsidy in energy security. What you do is this: you employ the services of energy accountants, energy auditors, energy engineers, oil and gas engineers, oil and gas lawyers, and let them go in. They only need to apply a simple principle of flow chart. You know, the good thing about flow chart is this: you have the beginning of what you want and you have the end. In between, you have decision boxes and process boxes. In between, we will find out why the system is not working. So when I hear people saying you need to scrap, this is because they don't really understand. We're talking about a country of about 200 million citizens relying on less than 10,000 megawatts of electricity. Is it possible for Nigeria to become industrialized? The answer is no. And the only thing citizens need to do is to rely and resort to other sources of energy. As I speak to you today, diesel is not affordable. Kerosene is not affordable. The only product that we are waiting to remove subsidy on is on PMS. And I can tell you, if you make the mistake of removing subsidy on the only product that is remaining, Nigeria's economy will grind to the cliff valley and collapse into the valley. It will grind to the cliff edge and collapse into the valley. And one thing that gets me surprised is this. A lot of people will just say, remove subsidy, remove. Ask them the simple question. We have removed subsidy on the price of diesel. We have removed subsidy on the price of kerosene. We have removed subsidy on the price of aviation fuel. Let them show us the investors that came in since we removed subsidy on the price of diesel. As far as I am concerned, since the removal of subsidy in the price of diesel, or before the removal, a liter of diesel was about 80 naira. Now it is about 800 naira. Where are the investors that they were talking about? The truth is this. What has happened is that strategic industrial sectors, strategic commercial sectors, and strategic domestic sectors have all collapsed. That is why when you go to commercial sectors like banks and the rest, they start work at around 8 or 9 o'clock and they shut down at 3 o'clock because they cannot afford the cost of energy, technically called diesel. When you go to the aviation sector also, what you discover is this: you only experience mass sack, mass cancellation of flight, and mass delays. So for those who are proponents of subsidy removal, why not show us what we have benefited? The truth is this: many of these guys are bereft of information. And I feel surprised when I hear people saying that it is private sector that is supposed to lift an economy out of the woods. It is the government of nations. Government is supposed to provide goods and services for citizens. Private sectors are after profit maximization and cost minimization. Quote me that I say so. And if anybody goes to your area and sets up a company or a refinery, they are not setting those companies or refineries because they love the people in those areas. They have seen a targeted market where they will maximize profit and minimize cost. It is only government that provides goods and services. And that is why government will create road or will construct roads through villages, whether you have criminals, armed robbers, or prostitutes. Government must do that because it is government responsibility to provide goods and services. When government will construct hospitals or polytechnics or universities or secondary schools, they will not bother whether there are armed robbers there, Yahoo. So even from that angle, people should understand that it is the responsibility of government to provide goods and services. And by extension, it is only government that provides subsidies. When you see private firms surviving in a place, they don't go there because they love the citizens of or indigenous of that location. They go there because they have seen where they can capitalize on, maximize profits, and minimize their cost. But in the process, they will need to employ or have the use of human capital. So you see them employing accountants, engineers, laborers, auditors. It's not because they love. This is but for government, whether they love your citizens, whether you throw stones at them or not, they must provide goods and services.
Well, but these arguments, for example, in the current fiscal year, if you look at the removal of subsidy and the possibility of making over 6 trillion naira savings through subsidy removal,
yes,
and probably providing palliative here and there. What do you say to the proponents?
It is because they are short-sighted, and I will give you a very simple example. As I speak today, Nigeria's economy is prostrate. You know it. You are my senior professional. In fact, you are even my teacher. No, you know it. Look at the GDP variables today. As I speak to you, look at the consumption index. The minimum wage has been, or the disposable income of Nigerians has been eroded by inflation. So that simply means that C in the consumption index has become irrelevant. Look at the investment index on the GDP variable. What do you see on the investment index? There are no investments because some of the investors that came have to run away because of business climate hostilities. So the that investment index is not there. Look at government investment. Every time government is complaining that there is no cash, there is no money, all we are experiencing is ballooning debts. Just look, we are looking at the GDP variables. Then look at the export-import differential on the when you're talking about the GDP equation, is heading towards 0 or negative. because Nigeria has been reduced to a melancholy country and more of an import-dependent country. So from that angle, you will also understand that everything about the economy is prostrate. So when people are saying they couldn't explain to you how the benefits of the removal of subsidy on the price of petrol, diesel, aviation fuel, kerosene, and the rest, and they are only looking at just one product. Let me tell you, if you remove subsidy on the price of petrol today, the calamity, because they are just looking at the 6 trillion naira, the social, economic, and political calamities will be more than 10 or 20 folds. Because all these guys that are not being provided jobs and are trying to be creative to get energy or power and provide for themselves, if you now render them irrelevant and useless and they decide to go into crime, can 6 trillion Nigerian naira resolve the problem? So from that angle, you will know that there is short-sightedness.
Well, now there's an argument about, subsidizing the rich.
Which is very, very unfortunate. In Nigeria, there are no rich people. If truly we are a population of about 200 million citizens, quote me that I said more than 95% of Nigerians are poor. I'm saying this with all amount of confidence.
What about the middle income class?
No, it has been eroded. So most of the people, again, because in Nigeria, you see somebody living in a big house or driving a big car and you think he's rich. Most of the people you think are rich people go to banks. When you go to banks, they are responsible for the collapse of so many financial institutions. They are bloody debtors. So in Nigeria, there are no rich people. It's a deception. And there is this saying that you are subsidizing the rich. In Nigeria, we are not driving cars because of luxury. We drive cars because cars are necessities. There are no good transportation systems. That's the reason. And if you say because that man is called a big man, he has a car for the nanny, for madam, for gardener and the rest, and you up the price of the only product remaining. Meanwhile, you have not explained what we have benefited from the price of the other product. And that guy sacks all those drivers. Will government provide jobs for them? So you could see that we are so narrow-minded. Another thing is this: when you look at these computer operators, hairdressers, people who are working in all these places, even our youths, vulcanizers and the rest, that require energy. They cannot afford diesel. Government cannot provide jobs for them. So if you up the price of petrol, the only remaining product shamelessly, and all of them lose their jobs and they decide to take to crime, and the 6 trillion naira you are thinking of saving be able to solve the problems. And another strange thing is this: they say our refineries are comatose, our refineries. It's also so shameless. Quote me that I said refining is basic chemistry. Refining is not as complex as heart surgery, kidney transplant, or even cesarean operations. And let me explain. In refining, you are talking about mechanical tools. If something goes wrong, whether with heat exchangers or boilers, all you can do is to replace them. But if a doctor makes a mistake during kidney transplant or heart surgery or even cesarean operation, the patients die. You can't get the life back. So who says refining is more complicated? I am waiting to see that process engineer or petroleum engineer or chemical engineer who will tell me that refining is more complicated.
Wow. I want to comment that this is so sensitive. Now, recall, we have 4 refineries that are moribund.
Yes.
So with the way you've explained the simplicity, right?
I will explain. Don't waste your time because we don't have enough time. Let me ask. Nigeria is a member of OPEC, right? Are there comatose refineries in Saudi Arabia? Are there comatose refineries in Libya? Are there comatose refineries in Iraq, Iran, Malaysia, Indonesia, Qatar, and the rest? Why is it that it's only in Nigeria that we have moribund refineries? This simply tells you that what we are experiencing is we are experiencing an economy that is being led by leaders who are docile. So quote me that I said that Nigeria is experiencing leadership docility. And we live in a country where some of our technocrats, I'm sorry to say, are press singers because we know these things don't work. Okay, Look at the abundance of natural gas we're talking about. From natural gas alone, you will get ammonia. From ammonia, you will get urea. From urea, you will get fertilizer. Why is it that we don't have enough fertilizer in Nigeria? I'm from the northern part of the country. I'm sorry to say this. The bag of fertilizer that used to cost about 2,000 naira is probably more than 20,000 Nigerian naira. How can that be defended? Nigeria is a member of gas exporting countries forum like Qatar. Some people went to Qatar and watched the World Cup. So Nigeria should be as lit as Qatar. Why can't we use our natural gas, drive gas turbines, and generate electricity? Because if you generate electricity, there will be glut at the filling stations. So when I hear people talking, why are refineries not moribund in these other countries? And there is something I can tell people, and it can be checked. Before I came for this program, I have Nigerians who are colleagues and friends who work with refineries offshore. They don't have all these problems. If you go to a place like Saudi Arabia, they cannot lose 1 barrel of crude oil, or 1 standard cubic feet of gas cannot get missing. It must be accounted for. Maybe there will be pipe integrity issues, but it is only in Nigeria that some years ago, if I remember, the then Minister of Finance, Okonjo-Iweala, or the Minister for Petroleum, said Nigeria was losing about 400,000 barrels of crude oil per day. And I did the analysis. Many people will not understand. A barrel of crude oil is equivalent to 42 gallons. A gallon is 4 liters. If you multiply 400,000 liters, barrels of crude oil by 42 and by 4, you will get about 60-something million liters of crude oil. Divide that by the capacity of a 33-liter tanker. That will tell you that Nigeria was losing an average of 2,000 tankers of crude oil per day. When I heard that, I wasn't surprised at the business climate hostilities. And that was why investors, especially international oil companies, were running away. Any country where you are losing something like crude oil, you are losing about 2,000 tankers of crude oil per day. Quote me that I said, it is not petty. It is a well-crafted and a well-syndicated criminality. And there is no economy that will stand. So at a point again, when many of the international oil companies were running away, I heard some people say, no, they are divesting because they are going to renewable energy. And I said, it's a lie. They were running away from Nigeria because they were experiencing business climate hostilities. And that is the reason, as I even speak to you, as I speak to you, because of business climate hostilities in the oil and gas industry, because we are restricted to oil and gas industry now, even the remaining oil companies are not doing well. It is in Nigeria today, quote me that I said, today is 4th of May 2023, that I, your junior colleague, said that in the whole of Nigeria, we don't have up to 15 active drilling rigs. And if you don't have 15 active drilling rigs, how can you be able to drill, produce, and meet up with your OPEC quota? This same Nigeria, there was a time when this same Nigeria was having more than 30, 40 active drilling rigs, drilling every day. So it tells you it is business climate hostilities. Then let me tell you also another danger, because I've moved back to the upstream that many people don't know. Many of these oil companies also, when you go to on land locations, swamp and deep offshore, all the trucks that they have, all the vessels that they have are running on diesel at the rate of 800 or 700 naira per liter. Tell me how these companies are going to break even. So they are also groaning in pains.
Wow. So many things to be said. Okay, now can private and modular refineries, given the complexity we created around,
thank you, my senior professional colleague and teacher.
How can
when we talk about all these deferred tax, we talk about IFRS, you know how sometimes I will be shivering as my senior brother. But let us stop this one. Let me tell you another thing again. Let me even talk about illegal refineries. I've heard people saying, oh, these illegal refineries, artisans and what, why can't you legalize them? Let me tell you what many people don't understand. First of all, those things we think are illegal refineries, they are pollution plants. They are toxification plants and they are carcinogenic plants. Then those who are involved in those activities, first of all, are thieves. The vandals or those people are thieves because they tap into the pipeline. The crude oil or gas that is there does not belong to them. It belongs to oil companies, whether major oil companies or local oil companies. So first of all, they are thieves. Okay. Then this is what happens. When they tap and they steal the crude oil, because everything, there are processes of getting licensed to have standard refineries. When they steal, the first thing is this: some of the stolen crude oil will spill on the environment. The first thing that does, it biodegrades the environment. The one that would percolate and get to the ground will first of all contaminate what we call freshwater aquifers, where we get our drinking water. Then some will spill to the farmlands and they will biodegrade the environment. That is why people cannot farm very well. Some that will move and get to the stream will destroy aquatic lives or animals. And that's why even birds that go and prey on the seas and the river, they suffer from a technical medical terminology we call hypothermia, temperature differential. They get gummed. Then by the time they do that, as they are burning the crude oil, the ones that gets to the atmosphere comes back as acidic rain. And that's why you have all kinds of bronchial problems. So first of all, you are anything illegal refinery and those involved, you're talking about toxification plants, and you are talking about criminals and vandals. Then when you talk about modular refinery, it is very, very strange also. And I said, if Nigeria needs ideas, I mean, we have the technocrats all over. But first of all, Nigeria can get this or be guided by OPEC. Nigeria is a member of OPEC. On management of our gas, Nigeria is a member of that cartel called Gas Exporting Countries Forum, with headquarters in Doha. So when you look at what is happening, in the context of Nigeria, the theft and criminality and the rest, as far as I'm concerned, there is no political will from our leaders. If not, these things shouldn't be happening.
Okay. Now,
then modular refineries, let me tell you, quote me that I said, one of the major problems Nigeria is having today is energy deficit. And when you talk about energy, we need electricity. And because there is no electricity, right, people cannot afford the cost of diesel because it is affecting their businesses and they cannot break even. They resort to petrol. Modular refineries do not produce petrol. So even if the thinking is to resolve and solve problems, modular refineries do not produce petrol.
What do they produce?
They only produce diesel. And most of them, they cannot produce petrol. The reason is because they are not equipped with what we call CCUs, catalytic cracking units. And as I speak to you, remember, we have been through the whole world. So I'm talking modular refineries do not. And even if modular refineries were to be produced, I'm sorry to say this. During the days of Kachukwu, I remember when he went to Baramatu, people were lifting him and they said they were going to come up with greenfield refineries, they were going to generalize refineries. Where are the refineries? I talk with passion like this because I have practiced on land locations, I have practiced on swamp location, shallow offshore and deep offshore. And as I speak to you, we have Nigerians scattered all over. Whether you talk about institutes that have something to do with energy economics, energy engineering and the rest. And they're also working in refineries. So we're not talking about things that can be hidden under the table.
Okay, fine. But as an aspect, before we go, we are going to open our studio to take questions, commentary. Now, but if the modular refinery can only include refine and produce diesel, right?
Yes.
Does it not, if we have them in large quantity, yes, does it not help in creating local availability?
First of all, what's the problem of Nigerians today? It's petrol.
Okay.
So that knocks it off. Because already strategic sectors cannot break even. Do you know something that is going on today? If you go to a hospital today that is supposed to have probably a private hospital that is supposed to house probably 100 patients. Do you know, even if they have just 10 patients, they will be forced to run the generator throughout the night.
Correct.
How can they break even? Go to a hotel today. If that hotel is supposed to house probably 200 guests, do you know, even if they have just 10 guests or 20 guests, they will be forced to run diesel generator throughout. How can they break even? And let me give you a practical example of how subsidy works. Any product that has no substitute, if you say you will deregulate the price of that product, it will not be possible. You will collapse your economy. A practical example is this. This is bottled water. In Nigeria, the price of bottled water is deregulated. That is why you can go to somewhere, maybe a hotel, a restaurant, this same bottled water that is probably 1,000 or 500 naira, you can go to the street and buy it maybe 100 naira. Are citizens complaining? The only reason why citizens are not complaining is because you have alternative ways of getting the same water. You can get this water from the well, you can get this water from the river, you can get this water from the borehole. But in the case of petrol, will you put ogogoro inside the tank of your car? In the case of diesel, will you put palm oil inside the tank of your car? I'm telling you, these are realities. The problems of Nigerians are things that we can break down to elementary problems. So you people are not complaining, and that is how subsidy works. But any economy where you don't have substitute, let me tell you, the price of that thing, if you deregulate it, people will suffer. Because you're talking about a country where you need to create aggregate mobility of labor that will make citizens to be able to be very active and comply with their civic responsibilities of paying taxes and levies. And you are a tax guru. Okay, even with what is happening, do you know about a week or 2 weeks ago, there were a new set of taxes? You are my tax teacher, and you know that. How can these companies, these organizations that are groaning in pains be able to
bear more burden in the name of
and even in those days when we were talking about petroleum industry and bill, it was similar. I'm sorry, with due respect, it was not well packaged, because what was supposed to happen then was you were supposed to congregate oil and gas accountants, oil and gas engineers, oil and gas lawyers, oil and gas environmentalists, oil and gas auditors, and let them look at everything. Because when I say production, as when somebody says production as maybe a tax analyst or a chartered accountant, the thinking is different from an oil and gas engineer. You're supposed to congregate these guys, and when you are even talking about bioremediation, you understand, and biodegradation, the environmentalist thinks differently. The community person thinks different. You're supposed to congregate these guys. They will analyze everything. Then when you analyze, then you don't put them congregate them in one place. Then legislators will ask them questions, so that if they ask something that I don't understand, maybe as a tax practitioner, you, the engineer, or you, the accountant, or you, the environmental, will explain. Then they will now aggregate the thoughts of everybody. With all the passage of the petroleum industry bill and everything, was it what stopped vandalization? Has vandalization stopped? No. It has not stopped. Have we improved the production of Nigeria? We have not, because we can't even meet up with our OPEC quota.
Well, thank you, Dr. Balazaka. We're coming back. The bottom level we're going to, Dr. Baka, you need to tell us, eventually, when we get back to you, are we going to subsidize forever? Right? So I'll come back to that. So I want to open our lines. Please, you may use the palm icon on your apps and devices. Palm icon for your question, we'll take them, and we're going to call on you. So let's quickly scroll down to comments. Someone is asking how that is from Shosonlu. Going forward, sir, how best can we effectively resuscitate our refineries to function optimally in line with the global best practice? How best can we effectively resuscitate our refinery to function in line with the global best practices optimally. We'll get back to that question.
And let me
okay, quickly,
so that,
quickly,
because to answer that question, you were asking, can we subsidize forever? The question, I will answer that question with a question. Are we supposed to have public hospitals in Nigeria forever? Are we supposed to have public educational institutions in Nigeria forever? Are we supposed to have security agencies in Nigeria forever? If you said a time will come when we will not need security agents in Nigeria, then that means we will not also need subsidy. Okay. What you are supposed to do, you will graduate out of subsidy, because subsidy is to cushion your pains so that you can get to a particular level. There is a level you will get to now. You will go to a special hospital. You will go to a special university. Whether army is there or police is there or not, you will have a car that will be bulletproof. But that does not mean you will say security agencies should not exist. Public universities should not exist. We are still talking about energy security. Your country is a country where the minimum wage cannot buy a 30-kilogram bag of rice. A 50-kilogram bag of rice. And sometimes I hear people making example. They will say, if you go to country X or Y, they pay so dollars per liter. Ask them, how much is the minimum wage there? You know, then when he is saying, now, what can we do to solve this problem? The simple answer is also straightforward. Why is it that there are no comatose refineries in Saudi Arabia? How are they doing it? How is Libya coping? How is Indonesia? How is Qatar? How is Brazil coping? The key thing is Nigeria is a member of OPEC. That is why you have a cartel. If something is not working in your own country, all you need to do is you resort to the cartel. But like I told you, I have discovered in the context of the Nigerian oil and gas industry that we have economic vampires, we have economic marauders, and we have economic traitors on the chain of crystallization of activities that have to do with the oil and gas industry. And this is the way to resolve it, like I said. Another thing again is this. If you look at the human digestive, I like giving practical examples. If you look at the human digestive system, if I put food here, the residue is supposed to come at the other end. Every other thing will remain within this system. So if for one reason or the other, I cannot excrete, by the time you congregate the necessary medical practitioners, they will be able to find out. If it is my kidney that is not working, they will know. If it is my liver, if it is something, if there is striation in my intestine, it will be known. It is the same thing with the oil and gas industry. We're talking about basic distillate. And do you know one thing about refining? Is principle of temperature differentials and boilers. Quote me that I said so. Once you introduce the crude oil at a given temperature, cooking gas will come out. At another temperature, kerosene will come out, diesel will come out, until the time you will get to bitumen. The next thing you put what we call sweeteners, so that you will know that this is the odor or the smell of, yes, you know, petrol, diesel. But Nigeria has been reduced to a country where you produce so much cassava, but every time you want to eat gari, or so gari or tapioca, you have to go to somebody who does not cultivate cassava and buy. It's shameful. Nigeria has been reduced to a country where you produce so much beans, but every time you want to eat akara or moi moi, you have to go to somebody who does not even cultivate beans to buy from him. That's what Nigeria has been reduced to, because that's exactly what we are doing with this importation, and I will explain. You understand? Everybody knows that if we start internal refining with the support of government, let me tell you, because internal refining, the first thing that will happen is if we halt that importation and started refining internally, the pressures that Nigeria has been suffering of Forex will be cut off. Almost immediately. That is the first thing. I'm telling you, that is the first thing that is going to happen. You are going to cut off that pressures. Then internally again, we will grow our GDP. Then another thing I keep telling people is this: even the private refiners or whoever that will want to come, it is government that supports everywhere. In the biggest economy today, is the US. I was told is the US. But US is also the biggest debtor. US is the biggest investor. US is the biggest guarantor. So if we have private investors in Nigeria, what the Nigerian government needs to do is to support them, because at the end of the day, they will employ citizens and they will be compliant with their civic responsibilities of paying taxes, which we should talk about as a tax guru. Yeah. Then the next thing again Nigeria needs to do is to support them. You construct rail lines, you understand, and pipelines across only even West African sub-region. Just imagine if Nigeria were to have rail lines and pipelines, and those private companies are supplying all the diesel, the kerosene, and aviation fuel to the West African sub-region. That is how you control regional economic power. And if you don't have economic power, you will never have a sensible political power. That's why Nigeria is not respected among the Committee of Nations.
Yeah, Dr. Bala, thank you so much in that. Because you've okay, now we get where you were going in your analysis. Now, before we talk about removal and all that, we need to achieve internal refining as a nation. We need to be able to domestically,
yes,
refine and get to that
domestication.
Point. That point where we say,
you just
of course, automatically to follow.
Let me tell you, if there is electricity today, there will be glut at the filling station. Okay. In Nigeria today, if you fill your car, many people will buy a 25-liter jerry can of petrol and they will use it for 1 week. But because of this COVID and people working at home, you will need 75 liters of petrol to be able to run your generator and be functional. We all know it. And there is something that is very strange. How can you go? That was why I gave the example of the cassava and the the akara. I mean, it's shameful. The first thing you need to do is to halt the pressures that you are experiencing. And as I said, refining is chemistry, basic chemistry. Refining has been there before I was born, and refining will be there after I was born. Refining is different from robotics or mechatronics.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. So now we're going to go straight to the question. Olusegun, please, you just have 45 seconds or 45 and keep it straight. Question can be 45 seconds. Yeah, I mean, solution so yes, come here. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And to our paper presenter, thank you very much, comrades Kabbalah. I just want to ask, how do you put this to bear, considering our institutes? This revenue is attached, taxation is attached to revenue. So when the revenue is not coming and you are diverting everything possibly to subsidy, it will definitely has its own impact on taxes that people will pay. What advice do you think we can do? And is it possible that we have like a position paper, even from the institute, to complement what we have in the public domain? Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Baka, let us take on that. So I just take them at one swoop.
No, it's because
I've noted them down. Noted them down because of our time. So go ahead to Rotimi Oyelere. If you can hear us, can you please unmute and speak? Let's take out the question, then you respond in one swoop. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Good morning, all, and thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bala, for your great analysis. Sir, what I would just want you, if you can help us break this down, unpack it, what is actually even the price component? Because last year I asked, we are one of this from, and I asked a question, and the Honorable Minister of State for Finance, being a petroleum expert as well, said that even when we produce locally, the price will not come down significantly. So can you help us unpack this so that we actually know the subsidy cost, and with that our institute can also advise the government, because the bottom line is we are bleeding physically. Our fiscal situation is precarious, and we need to do something. Otherwise, Nigeria, we're heading towards a very dangerous fiscal situation. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for this.
Please, what is the question of the second person? Let me answer.
He was asking that how much is government paying?
Okay, thank you. He was talking about that. Somebody said, some people said we will not even benefit if we refine internally. That is, like we said in Nigerian parlance, that is the greatest lie from the greatest Jupiter. I recently had a discussion with one of the international finance institutions and one of their reps in Nigeria. And that was the way he spoke. He said, even if you guys refine internally, the highest you are going to save per liter is just like 10 naira. But why is Libya refining internally? Why is Saudi? But I said, oh, so there will even be savings of 10 naira per liter. Then I said, thank you very much, sir. We have been told that Nigeria imports about 70 million liters of PMS per day. So assuming we will be saving 10 naira if we refine internally, multiply the savings per day and see that we will be saving 70 million multiplied by 10. Check the savings in a day. Check the savings in a week. Check the savings in a year. That will tell you we will save so much. And I proved to the man and I said, if Nigeria were to refine internally, we will be saving more than 100 naira per liter, multiplied by the savings. Because what you need to do, first of all, check the import cost. Even if it is one naira you are going to be saving by refining internally, multiplied by 70 million liters. And then some people also said, are we consuming that much? And I said, yes. The reason is because there is no electricity. People should remember there is no energy. We are running on diesel here. If I go to my house, I will run on generator. So who says, many people, like I said, when you go, you buy 25 liters in your car, but the other ones, you buy for your generator. Then Sheson Okwade, again, my senior professional colleague, asked a question. And what was that, his question? Yeah,
that, the subsidy, if you do not, if you keep subsidizing,
okay,
that the revenue, and
okay, I just remember, it's not, okay, but the calamity will be more than that 6 trillion Nigerian naira. And another thing again, sir, let me answer your question with an explanation. A lot of people are saying the Nigerian oil and gas, that we are relying on a monoproduct, we are a monoproduct economy. Saudi Arabia is a monoproduct economy. Why are they doing well? The United Arab Emirates, a lot of Nigerians go to Dubai, they come back with chocolate. Those chocolates are product of cocoa in Nigeria. The whole of United Arab Emirates is relying on one, is a monoproduct economy, but it is the creativity of their leaders that made them to have good hospitals today and made them to become a tourist destination. So it is not the monoproduct nature. When you go to developed economies, when you go to Iran, Iraq, Malaysia, a lot of Nigerians are lecturers in Malaysia. Malaysia is doing well, it's relying on crude oil. So when you get the revenues from your monoproduct, it is the creativity to make sure you have other things. And some people don't know, only from petrochemicals alone, Nigeria will become extremely rich because refineries are different from petrochemicals. Refinery produce fluids or liquids, petrol, diesel, then cooking gas, aviation fuel. If you go to petrochemicals, all the resins you are talking about, capsules, the drugs, even materials are from petrochemicals. If we just go to only petrochemicals alone and refining, we will produce so much to be rich. Anybody who tells you that we should continue refining or rely on certain things is not telling you the truth. And some of these nations that are telling you that you should divest, you should do this, ask them. Petrol is not part of their problem. Cooking gas is not part of their problem. Diesel is not part of their problem. Electricity is not part of their problem. Nigeria is an emerging economy, but we are supposed to have part level. It is due to leadership docility. And because we have economic vampires, marauders, and traitors on the chain of economic crystallization, but we can stamp them out if we apply the principle of digestive system or we apply the principle of flow chart, carry out decision and process boxes, and we will filter all the lacunas, even if we don't fix, but we will know where the faults are.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Zaka, for that. We have a few time to go. Mr. Ekoko, is that Ekoko? Please write your name, Galaxy A52. We need your name, please. Mr. Ekoko, your question, please. 30 seconds, your question, please. Just question or contribution.
Thank you, Balazaka. Thank you very much. I want to ask a stupid question. supply and demand, we know. I know there's also the issue of these cocaine and all these illegal drugs. But my question is, why not we try to expand our market to these our surrounding countries that people sell to illegally, boost our capacity in-house, sell officially, and make more money from taxes because we are doing open business. I mean, I've always wondered why we complain, oh, Mali is collecting our oil, Niger is collecting our oil, call all these countries surrounding us. When we can put more effort to build the refinery and expand our productive capacity, expand our economy, and make more taxes. Please,
the answer is very simple. Yes, the answer is very simple. You think but that was why I said, why are these things not happening in Saudi Arabia? Why are they not happening to the crude oil and products in Libya, you know, in Iran, Iraq? Why are these things not happening in the US, in Malaysia? And I hear some people saying the reason why we are experiencing smuggling is because it is cheaper it's cheaper in Nigeria. So I asked somebody, so if you are a restaurant owner and you need to feed your children with chicken, you will now be considering what you are, because your neighbor cannot afford chicken. You will say, no, you will not give your children chicken. It's not correct. Why do you have security agencies? So that is another very dumb argument. You cannot, Nigeria is a sovereign nation. You cannot say because you want to provide water to your citizens, then because water is so cheap, you will make it more expensive so that foreign nations or neighboring nations will not be able to steal. And remember, I still tell you, the minimum wage in Nigeria is just 30,000 Nigerian naira. It cannot buy a 50 kg bag of rice. And even people who are talking about minimum wage, if they are honest to us as our economic leaders, let them put out 30,000 naira and show how you can pay for your transport, your food, your medication, and other ancillaries. You can see that we are running probably, I'm sorry to use this word, a fake or a voodoo economy.
Yeah, Dr. Bala, thank you. Our time is up. So, Mr. Sorry for those who cannot take your question or your commentary. The time is so short for so many things we need to discuss in this regard. Dr. Balazaka, we're up. Now, if you are to speak to the incoming administration,
yes,
with respect to first subsidy removal, no removal, refinery, and the way forward, what should be your one sentence or two sentences?
One sentence is this: Mr. President, those of you that the Almighty has crowned that you will lead our country, and we have handed over our economic and political and social destiny into your care. If you remove subsidy on the price of the only product remaining, quote me that the same level of anarchy, social, political, and anarchy will grind this economy to a cliff edge and collapse it into the valley. What you need to do, first of all, is to halt everything that will make us to be spending so much on Forex. Internal domestication is the key. Then secondly, let us make sure so we take advantage of our gas, get enough fertilizer, boost agriculture, use the same gas that we have, drive gas turbine, generate electricity, and there will be glut at the filling station. Then finally, even if you are running out of ideas, you are members of OPEC, go let them guide you how OPEC member nations refineries are working. On the utilization of your gas, Nigeria is a member of a gas cartel called GECF. Go to Qatar in Doha, go to Doha in Qatar and let them guide you on the utilization of their gas. And finally, Nigeria is supposed to be the continental hub for Africa. But if we don't have economic power, we cannot have political or regional or continental power. And we will not be respected among the Committee of Nations.
Wow, thank you, Dr. Balazaka, Comrade Balazaka, for joining us. Dr. Balazaka and Comrade, thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
I've been reading a whole lot there. I was paying attention. They've asked you to come again.
No worries.
Asked you to come again. So
it's my institute. You are my teacher. You are my senior professional colleague. I will always respond.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us from all over Nigeria and the world. Bye-bye for now. God bless.